Hey, all right. I'm sure we all heard the prompt. Well, thank you, Dr. Bava, and welcome you all. So great to see so many people join and try to figure out, hey, what is esports about? So welcome. It's something I'm extremely passionate about, and continue to drive this force. So let me just give you some background information about me. I am very much of a constructivist, an experientialist, but more importantly, I am a licensed professional counselor, licensed clinical mental health counselor in multiple states. I am also certified DBT and telemental health therapist as well. Some of my clinical experiences includes working in incarcerations facilities, psych hospitals, detox clinics, you name it, SPMI, severe and persistent mental illness. That is my thing. I thrive off that. Um, I was an athlete in college, so this is kind of where it lends me to this lens. We're using esports as an intervention, and now I'm a psychotherapist, rehabilitation counselor. So trying to make it all come together, and you'll see where some of my passion comes out in the webinar, hopefully, because we're through virtual means. That sometimes what's needed is a little bit of excitement. um, some insight on how we are using this. As you can see, my name is Dr. Stackhouse. I am here at the University of South Carolina within the School of Medicine, Department of Neuropsychiatry and Behavioral Science in the Rehabilitation Counseling Program. And I will speak on some of the ways that we have embedded this in our research around campus. Currently, we use esports and rehabilitation, in our fitness center here. We've just embedded esports in our mindfulness and movement component. We also partner with different entities across campus. We partner with the College of Pharmacy here. They're utilizing it for desensitization, pharmaceutical training in terms of like smoking cessation and things of that nature. We also embed it in with PAs or physician assistants as a tool for intake assessment screening as a component of emotion regulation and things of that nature. So we continue to grow and we continue to push the envelope of how esports can be used. So we use that in what we deem healthy campus initiatives as well as mental health initiatives. My passion again behind using esports has come from being an athlete in college. Now I am in psych rehabilitation. I've done psych rehabilitation for going on 15, 10, 10 plus, let's just say 10 plus years because it's about 13 years or more. And also trying to figure out how we can utilize esports for translational therapy for those individuals that are guarded, for those individuals that lack social connectedness and lack a sense of social emotional control, emotion regulation in terms of anger management. All of those nuances have driven me to utilize esports and really expound the use, because we have a lot of, or some therapists out there who are like, what can I do differently with my client who's not responding to XYZ treatment? So that's what drove me to do this work. So let's get into some of the things that we will tackle and learn while we are here in the webinar, and hopefully give you some insight. So what will you learn? What are you here for, right? We are all here for some form of tools to acquire and see what's this about. So what I'm hoping you grasp from this, and what my intent is to enhance competencies regarding rehabilitative use and therapeutic translation through esports. Also to identify methods to empower social integration, meaningful connectedness through use of esports as a tailor-assisted technology, because yes, it's customizable. Also, I'm hoping that you gain insight on ways to advance research on rehabilitation and recovery using esports as an assessment. So here, let's explore the use of esports and unveil improving mental health, unveil enhancing cognitive skills, promoting that sense of social connectedness, providing a sense of achievement, encouraging physical activity, fostering creativity, and what rehab counselors do, assess for optimal level of functioning or optimal levels of functioning. So, esports modalities, right? There has been this rise in using virtual reality headsets, gaming consoles, and more recently, I'm sure you all are seeing it, especially if you're in social media or you watch any kind of TV or you have any students, you are seeing also artificial intelligence. It's on the rise. Well, with esports, it's also on the rise. There's a meteoric rise in popular culture and its economic and therapeutic value. Is it costly? Yes, but it can also be beneficial. And we'd be remiss if we didn't figure out ways to, hey, how can I use this tool for the greater good in our field? So what is esports? Yes, esports, electronic sports, that's what is deemed, right? And it's a field where individuals can compete, or they compete against individuals, or engage in their own sense of social emotional learning. But it's actually so much more. All right, so before we get into just a lot of the different use and how it's used, I first want to give you some, almost like a history lesson, so to speak. What applications are out there? How can they be used in terms of, is it in portability, or let's gain some insight on what's out there. What can we use? What has been used? So mobile applications are on phones, they're on tablets, they're on computers, laptops. Mobile applications have increased accessibility outside of therapy. Also, um, they are considered online digital games, and they combat psychological issues stemming from social isolation. They can, right? But they increase portability. There are wearable trackers out there and sensors as an alternative interface. If any of you have an iPhone, I have an Apple Watch here. They are alternative interfaces versus stationary modalities. There's varying licensing permissions that we also have to be aware of that continue to come a long way, right? We have encryption and things of that nature. But we do know it requires data usage, Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi connection. Same thing is going to apply to esports, right? But we can also see that with mobile applications being in existence, that means we are able to still cross over into the telehealth realm. Now we can get into screen imaging, and that's costly, but it can be done. Okay. With mobile applications, also the development of mobile applications, it allows us to enhance health-related studies. We have work in rehabilitation and interdisciplinary settings. So if I'm a rehab counselor, let's say I'm licensed, or I have my private practice and I want to see clients in the hospital part-time, well, mobile applications can actually allow us to do that. As a matter of fact, health-related studies have begun to explore the effect of esports on public health. For example, there are negative consequences as well as positive consequences. For negative consequences of quality, it influences or affects the quality of life. Quality of life could be altered through the use of esports to consumer abuse, leading to increased want for esports, console-based therapy, and we'll get into console-based therapy, but it can also lead to more isolation, and we have to be mindful of potential malingering effects. If someone wants to be more isolated and they want to play the game a little longer, and they want to engage in therapy, but they don't really want to engage in therapy, they really just want to be alone and play the game. So that's something that we also have to be mindful of. Some positive nuances as it relates to mobile applications and esports and things of that nature: access to social engagement, adaptive solutions to social change, and social connectedness. Okay. All right, game consoles. More on history. We've come a long way with game consoles. We have PlayStations, we have Xbox, we have VR HMDs, which I'll talk about next. But with game consoles, they're likely attached to a television, but not always, because we have Nintendo Switch and things of that nature. We have what else is there? Well, I know for sure there's Nintendo Switch. There's another one on the market. I just can't recall and remember. And actually now we have like Ataris and things of that nature. They're being placed in one console, small console, probably about the size of my hand. And we're attaching those to TV screens, television screens. And so, yeah, well, we continue to develop groundbreaking consoles in our society. But I'll give you some that have been made just so you know, hey, this stuff is not new. So there's something called the quad stick, right? And this is where we're getting into the rehabilitative components for person with disabilities and mental health. There is a tool called the quad stick that was created years ago. It's an mouth operated, so in someone who may be paraplegic, um, it's mouth operated. It's a mouth operated specialized gaming controller where they can't move their limbs, but they can move their tongue up, down, blow. So it's mouth operated gaming controller tailored to individuals that may be also experiencing paralysis. It offers a hands-free mechanism for engaging in digital gaming. It works across gaming consoles and computers, so you can move it around quite a bit. There's also another one called PlayStation's Project Leonardo. Project Leonardo was a customizable player controller designed to enhance accessibility for numerous disabled populations. It explores it explores nuances through brain activity. We now have Xbox. Xbox has different adaptive controllers useful for amputees and other physically disabled individuals. There are so many different ones on the market. But with gaming consoles, again, they're attached to the television, commercially available, and rehabilitation specific. And speed and range of motion limitations are something to be mindful of. Virtual reality. I'm sure you've seen all these commercials. Hey, what's virtual reality? We're seeing it more and more now. I think I recently seen a commercial with March Madness athletes on there, and she was walking into a room and she was playing herself. So VR HMDs, virtual reality head mounted displays. They are some of the newer tools that are on the market. And what is it? VR is a methodology for digitally recreated simulations of real world experiences. Okay? Virtual reality research in social neuroscience actually reveals that interdisciplinary fieldwork that investigates the means of social processes, behavior responses, mechanisms, outputs, and as well as it implements biological symptoms. That's your BPMs, beats per minute. That's your, again, your heart rate, your the breaths. How many breaths are you taking? It's also anxiety factors or mood factors. Now we have to be mindful with VR HMDs. They're costly, just like any other console. They're costly. They break. I think one of these right now is probably $300. So we also have to be mindful of that nuance. Web connection is also a thing. We have to make sure that we have internet connection for certain apps. Certain apps require a subscription, so that may be difficult to get to our clients, or if it's cost effective, who will cover it. So we have to pay attention to those as well. Okay, let's keep going. So now you've learned just kind of, hey, these devices. Okay, now I know what they are, what they look like, how to use them, some of the history behind them. Right. Now I have a question for you before we dive into some of this rich information that you came for. What drew your interest to esports as an intervention? Any of you? Guess I'll take as many as we can get, but let's get at least three. So, what drew your interest to esports as an intervention? Anyone? Anyone?
You want it in the chat, or you just want us to talk?
Yeah, just say it. Just say it.
Just all these young ones are into it. I think I've seen it. I've seen young adults with disabilities just use it for fun and enjoyment. I'm like, okay, hold on, maybe I could get you to use some of this for rehab and for wellness, other outside of what it's already doing for you to interact in that way. So I just was excited to learn more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Spot on. Others?
Us old ones also are into it, and us old ones are using it for our own therapy and rehab.
Thank you.
Yeah. Others? Let's get one or two more. What drew your interest? One more? No.
Dr. Stackhouse, we have some comments in the chat box that say previous connection to esports, curiosity about therapeutic work in online multiplayer games like Minecraft, like in virtual environments. And also, as a new counselor educator, I want to tie in my gaming experience in my professional identity.
Awesome. Yep, spot on. Spot on. Thank you, Dr. Baba. So we'll dive in some more. Okay, we have some time for Q&A at the end. But I just wanted to see what interests you, because I'm sure we have some interests that are congruent in terms of how we use these and how they're applied. So this is one of our apps that we use, and it's not necessarily for esports, but how far we've come, because it began with, hey, meditation. It began with as a psychoeducation tool. So this is guided meditation. We use this around our campus here for healthy campus initiatives and mental health initiatives for students, for faculty, for staff, where they come in and they engage in meditation. You can also use it in talk therapy with your clients that are guarded, or even narrative therapy. So let's see what we have here. Let's play a few minutes.
Today, in Zen, as in all meditation schools, we take some in Zen. Find somewhere quiet where you can be undisturbed. It's good to use a space that you can designate as your meditation space. Over time, that space acquires an energy and association with the practice. The act of returning to it creates a calm state of mind. In Zen, as in all meditation schools, we take some time to bring ourselves into the body. We do that initially by either sitting cross-legged on a cushion on the floor or on a chair. Sit with your back upright. You want to be straight and relaxed at the same time. Keep your neck in line with your spine. Now just take a few breaths and see how it feels to sit like this. If you find your mind wandering, that's completely fine and natural. When you notice this, just bring your mind back to the breath.
Okay. Oops, sorry. So that was guided meditation. And how we use guided meditation is we can use that for phobias. We can use, let me go back so you can see the screen. You can use that for phobias, for analysis of fear, narrative therapy. You can also make it a competitive component for self. You can attach time intervals to it. How long can they actually stay in this app? Also paying attention to some of their biofeedback markers, heart rate, BPMs, legs crossed, hands clenched, those different nonverbals as well. Matter of fact, we have taught or we've taught like some of our PAs, our physician assistants, and our nurses how to use it as an additional measure during your intake screening in terms of them being guarded and their heart rate levels and taking them through these different modules. Okay. So addictions, this is useful for motivational interviewing, cognitive restructuring, and decompensation prevention, okay, for psychiatric rehabilitation. All right. So then the next one we have here is Goliath. This is one that can be used for psychoeducation nuances. It also gives you the connection between schizophrenia and gaming that one may need to become aware of. And when I get into talking about the neuropsychiatric and brain components as it relates to esports use, this is something that probably will bring it to fruition, so you can understand the connection between the two, to understand how to use it in a positive manner, but to also be mindful of different levels of dopamine, serotonin, and things of that nature. So let's play a few minutes.
The mind is a mysterious place. Everyone's works a little differently. Who are you? Tell me your name.
David.
Let your eyes get used to the darkness. It takes time. Longer for some, more than others. Perhaps the only thing you can see are your hands. Our reality is made when sensation and expectation come together in your brain. There is no creature on your hand. Your mind joins up the dots between what you see and what you feel. That's how horror works. But that is a cheap trick. And this is not about cheap tricks. Reality is a very serious business, which is why you lot spend so much time trying to escape it. Now, feel the weight of your hands. Squeeze them gently. You can see them here. You can feel them there. But where are they really?
I'm going to fast forward it just a little bit.
I feel good because, I don't normally tell people about some of this shit. My fucking head's just fucked.
Unusual thoughts, having your thoughts kind of disrupted, it's not actually that uncommon.
Translate to our experience.
Think about medical history. But actually, it's not
So what's it like to know
uncommon for individuals to have.
What's it like to not
So to take an example,
What is the
someone who
difference
perhaps
between
it's
thinking
quite often linked to
and
trauma.
knowing?
Not always.
Memory?
I think that's really important to say, but it can be linked to
Self?
trauma.
I still don't feel ill.
Thought from.
This is psychiatrist Dr. Henry DeRoss.
I have a
What
headache.
is the nature of
Pain
this
is like
illness?
drilling inside of my head.
This
It
man
feels like
had a
nail. So I need to go get a hammer.
breakdown in the
Now I sound like a crazy
Dressed in this very particular way, to be communicating with them in this kind of.
Fast forward it one last time to the gaming mechanism.
When I was a kid, I played a lot of games. It was a way of getting away from things, having that escape. I got kicked out of home.
So with this particular app, this is called Goliath, and we used Goliath in our as a psychoeducation component for our students. It's also useful to understand, again, the nuances affiliated with gaming and some of these mental health disorders that actually exist, because yes, individuals can become overstimulated, and we have to understand what that might look like. With Goliath, it allows one to witness and empathize with the effects of schizophrenia. Okay. All right. Sorry. Okay, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty of things. Rehabilitation. How can we use esports, right? So using esports, it can serve as a multi-modal approach to look at, analyze, assess rehabilitative components geared towards psychiatric rehabilitation, social rehabilitation, emotion regulation, physical capacities. Esports has both preventative and therapeutic roles in medicine, addressing mental and other health issues. It's a socio-culturally developing technological intervention. Now let's talk about some of the building blocks here and how we can use it. Cognitively, esports can be used as a problem-solving tool, enhancement of skills and or abilities for persons with mental health or mental disabilities, strategic thinking, as well as paced decision-making, right? Depending on the levels, the rate of speed of the game, those tools, balls, no balls, things of that nature, level stages. For psychiatric rehabilitation, kind of in tandem with cognitive, esports has recently emerged as a promising avenue for the integration of individuals with disabilities into their social life, primarily to transcend both physical and demographic constraints. Okay? Socially, there's a collaboration component there, sense of belonging, social connectedness. We can foster that within individuals who are having social anxiety or antisocial behaviors or antisocial personality disorder mechanisms. We can assess for that. We can use this component to really see what the triggers are and the symptomatology that's being presented in that person that we may not otherwise see, because again, we just may not otherwise see it if we can't give them the stimuli to put them in those scenarios. Transculturation component, yes, especially with web-based gaming, because we have online. What do we have? What are those cards? We have cards now, and they put the gaming on the cards, the live, like Xbox Live and things. These individuals are all over the world, all over the country. Rocket League is one of those that you can play anywhere, and that's just one of the games where you can play across mediums, Western civilization, Eastern civilization, that transculturation component. Also in social rehabilitation, it can present a level of reflection of meaning as well as a reflection of feeling. Okay? For emotion regulation, we have emotional development that can occur when you use esports. Tragic optimism, that is the ability to handle hard well, in the coach in the voice of Coach Kara Lawson at Duke University. The ability to handle hard well. How can you use some of the hardships that you're experiencing for the greater good to optimize that level of thinking or your outlook on your ability, a motivational component, if you will. Physically, fine motor skills can be enhanced, assessed, and we'll get into some of those apps as well. And then also, esports is turning into a career. Esports is turning into a career, deemed esports ecosystems and development of the need for mental health assessments, psychiatric assessments. Also, esports is a career path for individuals that may have a physical disability or a mental disability, and this is an arena that they want to enter. We can use it as a tool. We have ONET and career counseling. This could be a tool to see if they're actually interested in esports and the development of esports, because it gears towards persons with a multitude of different disabilities. Disability is diversity, excuse me. Recovery. What exactly are the facets of recovery? Recovery entails hope, personal responsibility, education, self-advocacy, and support. But before we even get to the notion of is my client going to succeed in recovery? How are they doing in recovery? What's the best way to help them succeed and achieve the optimal level of functioning via recovery? We have to understand the components and the facets of the brain. And I'll tell you how esports works with the brain. There's so many different research, so much different research out there as it relates to, hey, dopamine, gaming and addictions, pros and cons. Most of them have been deemed inconsequential, I guess you could say. There's a level of incongruency there depending on your field. Some people love it and some people just like, no, gaming is not a good thing. You just have to figure out how to use it. But much like AI, it's still a tool. It's still a tool. So dopamine is the prominent neurotransmitter as it relates to esports use. Dopamine is a prominent esports neurotransmitter, It's the reward system of the brain. It empowers focus, energy, performance. Too much or too little could lead to depression and anxiety. This is where we have to be mindful of those levels. It also is a prevalence factor of Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, and psychosis. So what we have to do, we have to make sure that we understand how to control and leverage dopamine effectively. And that's the key to success with using esports gaming. Serotonin is the behavioral mechanism or the behavior system of the brain. It controls mood. It's also a temperature regulator, right? And that goes back to biofeedback, temperature. We can check temperature when we're utilizing esports. And I'll get into that. So also puzzle games are good for serotonin, strategy games, social games, physical activity games, because serotonin elicits positive emotions, resulting into serotonin increase. Then we have norepinephrine, which is the attention center of the brain that controls alertness, goal direction. And as I'm saying this, imagine your client engaging in these games and these different levels and the different nuances, different neurotransmitters are actually being impacted all at one time, right? There's nothing like, that is the ultimate real life scenario in terms of simulation, okay? Also, we have novelty, irregularity, and reinforcement. So esports fosters social emotional skills, memory retention, decision making of our clients. And what comes from that is hope, is personal responsibility, is education, is self-advocacy, and there's support there. There's support systems in there. Okay. How to attach it to theory, right? We have post-traditional theory and we have traditional theory, okay? In the midst of esports is useful for both theoretical applications, right? It is useful among traditional theoretical applications like CBT to use esports to develop and account for cognitive reframing, cognitive restructuring in CBT. For REBT, we can overcome thought blocking. We can assess and overcome irrational belief systems. It's also a motivational interviewing tool, right? Humanistic and existential theory can also be implemented by redefining optimal function in the midst of struggle. Right? What levels can they get to or can't they get to? How do they interact when they are facing a hardship? Right? The transactional theory of stress and coping is an additional, or if not, it's an applicable theory that's being used and useful for working with individuals with esports. For those of you that want to enhance those outlooks of, hey, what theory can I use, or which one is more applicable? Well, there are so many different ones that are. We just spoke on the traditional one. These are the post-traditional ones. So with transactional theory of stress and coping, it is a transactional relationship between the person, the environment, and the situation. With esports, esports can be a simulation tool where it's a play on role play, so to speak. So with the play on role play, we're looking at transactions between the environment and situations. So esports gameplay scenarios serve as situational guides of assessment, therapeutic translation, stress management, and stress management strategies can be analyzed. But we also have to recognize there are hazards to esports. The hazards could be malingering effects, as I've mentioned, an increase in BPMs for those individuals that are experiencing addictions and they're going through systematic desensitization. Right? There's also another theory that's on the horizon here, console-based therapy or electronic games psychotherapy. A harsh reality, right? I'll tell you a harsh reality. Patients can tire of rehabilitation feeling frustrated or dull. It's been reported that patients' adherence to long-term rehabilitation programs involving exercise protocols may be as low as 23%. With esports, VR HMDs, and our gaming consoles, we can gamify physical rehabilitation, turning the body into a virtual console. Right? And what comes from that, we can tailor the intensities. We have real-time tracking analysis, and it's an alternative adjunctive to treatment deemed esports medicine. The rehabilitative motive with use of esports is a play on the wellness approach, right? Cause and effect meets pause the game, and reflect. Cause and effect meets pause and reflect. What does that look like? Well, they can engage in the esports modality or gameplay or competitive level, and then they can reflect. They can engage in esports, and you can actually have talk therapy in the midst of engaging in esports or after. You can also use wearables to collect and triangulate the biometric data. That is the esports wearable plus the wearables, where you measure BPMs and you reflect and you cross-reference, okay, what was going on when he said this? And what was going on when he said a case study analysis? You can also use this in teletherapy. Now, the thing with teletherapy is it could be expensive. We can do screen mirroring, but of course that may be costly. We have to be mindful of that. Very effective. All right. There are 5 digital gaming esports themes in rehabilitation and recovery, what they're going to actually experience. Like, what's the point? Why am I engaging my client in esports as a tool? Well, here's why. Rehabilitation and recovery can present the sense of experiencing, belonging, performing, struggling, and enacting through participatory identities. The scores, the levels, the stages, the interactions can be indicators for goals reached or the lack thereof. Goals can be redefined, new measures can be established and agreed upon in ongoing treatment. Esports medicine, it's a tailor assisted to meet the need. Who can use it? We can tailor it. We want to make sure that we are adapting the device to the person and not the person to the device. We can change the device, but we can't necessarily change the person. So we also have to be mindful of that. We can make the device fit, but we don't want to make the person fit the device. We have to be mindful of that. So in other words, we want the sports mechanism that we use to fit the experiences and the outcomes for treatment for that particular individual, whatever they're experiencing. We have to tailor it to them. Who can we tailor it to? We can and how can we tailor it? Who can use it? We can use it in addictions counseling, psych rehabilitation, mood disorders, neurodevelopmental disorders, pain management, you name it. Esports is a tool where one can suffer upsets and enjoy exhilarating wins. As mentioned, the struggling piece, the recovery component and what that does to the brain, the emotion regulation, diversity of tools to host esports intervention. It goes back to diversity is disability and disability is diversity. Okay? Remember when I mentioned the Project Leonardo? Project Leonardo explores the capacity to control the tools, devices through brain activity. Well, bringing that full circle, using esports to control prosthetics devices in tandem with counseling psychotherapy, that's up and coming. I'll say that again. Bringing it full circle, using esports, as you see our veterans here, that's actually a really good example, our veterans here on the screen. Using esports to control prosthetics, those war veterans that may, be amputees, using esports to control prosthetic devices in tandem with counseling and psychotherapy. It's coming. It's coming. And that's a useful mechanism that you can utilize and embed in treatment with your clients. Again, simulated scenarios for simulated world experiences equals renowned recoveries. All right, so here is one is a physical gameplay. This is one of the more popular apps that I use here, we use here on campus. This is one of the more popular movement, physical activity apps, exercise, esports apps that we use actually across the country. It's top 10. This is Beat Saber. Beat Saber is useful for mindfulness, movement, and rehabilitation and recovery. You get a sense of performing, struggling, overcoming, resiliency. You can assess emotional regulation, range of motion. There's a conditioning component attached to it. This is good for amputees, neurodegenerative diseases, SCI, spinal cord injuries. So let's get into it. I'm just trying to get to the activity. So that's Beat Saber. Again, with Beat Saber, you can use it for different individuals with physical disabilities as a measurement component, range of motion. Within the VR HMD headset, they have these controls. The controls, you can kind of see it on the bottom of the screen on Beat Saber. And for example, like individuals or amputee, if they can't hold the controller, they can actually, there's a holder for their wrist and they can still engage in Beat Saber. So yeah, that's just one of the many ways we can use Beat Saber. And the way, of course, we assess is performing, struggling, resilience, emotion regulation. All right, let's keep going. Okay. More. What other tools are out there on the market that we can use? We have Minecraft, we have NBA 2K, we have HoloFit, and I'll give you some insight on just maybe two of these. So with NBA 2K, that's one of my favorites. That is one where you can utilize it as an emotional regulator for conduct issues in kids and children and adults as well, hyperactivity, symptomatology. You can assess that. You can minimize that, deter that, enhance pro-social behavior, social esteem building as you're engaging in competitive team play and socialization skills. Minecraft, I know someone mentioned Minecraft in terms of how can we use it in treatment and therapy. Well, Minecraft is also useful for individuals with autism, deaf and hard of hearing, to enhance quality of life and quantity of relationships with others. Legos is actually another one. HoloFit up here top right, that's a tool that can be used for paraplegics, injury recovery. You can use that with exercise equipment or without exercise equipment to assess for range of motion and or endurance. Individuals can go through motivational interviewing, tactics, C-DBT, you name it. Also really good for spinal cord injury rehabilitation. Pentapuzzle is useful in rehab recovery for neurodevelopmental disorders, impulsive and conduct disorders, mood regulation. And I'll show you really quickly what this looks like before we get into our other interventions for the last few minutes. So this is really good for fine motor control development, for neuromuscular disorders, those fine motor skills being developed. Individuals with TBI, traumatic brain injury, it aids in memory recall, cognitive restructuring, improving perception and spatial cognition and attention. I hope you all heard me. So this one is useful for, I'll repeat it, emotion regulation, neuromuscular disorders, fine motor skills, individuals with TBI, with focusing on memory recall, cognitive restructuring, improving perception, spatial cognitions, and attention span development. That's Pentapuzzle. All right. So what's the role of the therapist here? How do you use it and put it into treatment? Well, again, it fosters diversity, physical capacities, mental capacities, access, and accessibility. If you're in rehab or rehabilitation counseling or rehabilitation counselor education, you can use it in academia. I use it as an assessment tool. I teach our assessments course. I make our students use it or become open to using it in developing their treatment plans for baseline data of mental and emotional response. If someone's playing in esports, pay attention to, or how they're clenching their hands, are their legs crossed, all of those. Are they taking deep breaths? And you can attach again BPMs to that, any form of biofeedback that you're looking to assess. What else? It can be useful in triage and referral for those of you that work in inpatient treatment or work in psych hospitals, essentially alongside any students, any adolescents, any teens. That's also how you can utilize it. So the role of the therapist in rehab, as we all know, rehab counselors are flexible. So we work in a multitude of settings. In forensics, incarceration facilities, we can use it as a normalizer. We have anger management. Classes within incarceration facilities. We can use this as a tool for individuals who don't want to engage in anger management. I can tell you how many times working in incarcerations, we struggle to find tools for the clients to utilize while they're within an incarceration setting. And so they were missing some of these normalizers like esports and gaming. It improves self-concept and locus of control for individuals who have maybe conduct disorders, behavioral disorders, if they're on Supermax protocol, if they have some things that they may be dealing with at home, stress, their case, that's in forensics. And you can use that in a multitude of arenas. Addictions, addicted populations within academia, incarcerations, they are on the horizon, right, with the opioid epidemic. So we can use it as a desensitization tool, and a de-escalation tool as well. For veterans, we can use it for veterans, as you saw again in the other slide where we had them holding the VR tool, should I say. For Veterans Affairs hospitals, we can use it for prolonged exposure therapy with esports as a stimuli. We can also use it for cognitive processing therapy for veterans as in esports as a stimuli. So there are different ways that we can utilize esports. The therapist works to translate these clients' problems. Again, scenarios, simulated scenarios, renown recovery. The therapist works to improve compliance and functional outcomes of therapy, right? So we work in tandem with them. Since these consoles, they're on the horizon, we have to figure out how can we use them, and this is how we use them. The therapist uses esports as a tailor-assisted, again, tailor-assisted. Find a device that is reputable for the client's needs. Find an esports tool that is reputable for the client's needs to enhance optimal level of functioning outlooks. Interventions, how can they be used? With all of the jargon that I just spoke to you, what are the actual interventions that I can document? Here they are. Transference of skills, externalization of the problem, track client progress, exploration of functional capacities, embedding motivational interviewing, predictive factoring, interdisciplinary translations. If you're working in hospitals, psych hospitals, you got social workers, you got PAs, you got nurses. All of them are on one page in terms of developing that treatment plan for that patient from the wellness approach. Emotion regulation, use of questions, stages, and modules. Hey, how far can they get? Can we assess how far they got last week in the game or in the esports competition? What was their behavioral output? Is there emotional regulators here? What's going on? Paying attention to that biofeedback. All right. Then, last but not least, results and prognosis. Esports, the modality itself, it can be costly. Will use of esports as interventions be billable via insurance reimbursements? That's to be determined because these are expensive tools, right? These are expensive tools. But I'll tell you what, they'll be useful if you are familiar with EAP programs, employee assistance programs, program referrals for rehab counseling presents an avenue for esports as interventions, especially in areas not limited to workman's comp cases. If they want to return to work and they really want to engage in motor skill development alongside psychotherapy, this is it. This is it. So again, what continues to drive me to do this work? The development of esports ecosystems. There's a need for us to have better assessment measures as it relates to individuals that engage in esports. There just is. Rehabilitative esports applied emotional regulation and assessments, they're needed. Another reason why I continue to do this work, the need for more therapeutic translational therapies. The guarded overthinker, how can I assess them? Why are they so guarded? What am I missing, right? If they don't want to engage in talk therapy, how can I encourage them to do so? And if they're not encouraged to do so, I can pay attention to their competitive gameplay, right? Their social emotional regulation or the lack thereof. What else? Enhance access to diversified treatment interventions for diverse populations. Yes, yes, and yes. SPMI, there's so many different ones. There's addictions, there's mental, emotional, mood disorders, there's person with comorbid diagnoses, with physical disabilities, mental and emotional disabilities, and we have to figure out how to assess for all of those. If they're comorbid, then there's more than one. I have to figure out how to assess those with more than one mechanism, how to assess those, the symptomatology with the mechanism that's in front of me. Esports, why not? You got emotional regulators that are being presented. You got socio-emotional nuances that are being presented, cognitions, behavior outputs, behavioral responses, and then we also can do neurofeedback assessments as well. If that's not a play on comorbid diagnoses and giving them promising treatment towards rehabilitation and recovery in terms of optimization, I don't know what is. Also, it's again a workaround for the guarded overthinker, the development of esports medicine as an evidence-based approach, right? It just is there, and we have to figure out ways to use it. We can't run from it. It's on the horizon. It's on the rise. I say that to say esports is an emotional regulator for the injured, right? An emotional regulator for physical injury, mental injuries, mood disorder. It just is. It's a resilience measure in rehabilitation and recovery to establish a baseline for optimal functioning. Esports as an intervention is definitely next up. More esports as an intervention is definitely the next match in rehabilitation and recovery. So thank you. And I guess I'll stop sharing and open the floor for any questions. I'm trying to end this. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stackhouse, for just a truly riveting presentation and a very
Absolutely.
exciting one as well. So we
Absolutely.
do have a few questions for you, Dr. Stackhouse. First and foremost, are there any controllers that you might be able to speak about that can be operated by eye movement?
Um, there are, I can't remember the names off the top of my head. If she can email me, I'll put my, let me see if I can put my email in the chat. At least I want to say there are. I don't want to misspeak because there's so many different mechanisms out there, and I can't remember which one are controlled by the mouth, the eyes, and I also want to get the names if I could make sure I find it. Okay, so I can send my email in the chat here. Great question.
Thank you. And then it looks like there's another one, Dr. Stackhouse.
Okay.
Someone mentioned, I'm really interested in virtual therapy spaces and games. I've heard of some meetings with clients through avatars in Minecraft, Second Life, Rec Room, and other games or virtual environments. Do you know or can you share anything about the confidentiality or privacy of these platforms?
For which ones again? Say it again.
It looks like they were talking about Minecraft, Second Life, and Rec Room, or just kind of other virtual environments in general.
In terms of like the privacy policy and protocol?
Yeah, in terms of anything related to confidentiality or privacy on those platforms.
It just depends because some of the newer versions of Minecraft have different privacy policies and protocol. What you really want to pay attention to is what mechanism are you using in tandem with use of Minecraft. For example, in private practice, right? If you do telehealth therapy, there are platforms like Simple Practice, and you want to make sure that there's some form of encryption if you are doing screen sharing or screen mirroring. So that's probably a better question, not necessarily Minecraft itself, but what platform you're using to utilize Minecraft with your client.
Thank you. And it's like there's another one as well. Do you have any thoughts about balancing healthy amounts of gaming or screen time and the potential for addiction to these tools?
It depends on the tool. So game consoles on the TV screen, they're going to allow you to engage in them a little longer. But VR, for example, if you have a session with the client, maybe 30 minutes, 45, okay? But you still want to get in room for, again, that talk therapy, the psychotherapeutic analysis. So even that may be too long for your client. It just depends on your client. Because I'm thinking in 50-minute interviews for practice work. Now with VR HMDs, essentially, we don't necessarily want you to be, well, it's actually not a good idea. According to research and experience with use, maybe 15 minutes to 30 max, and even 25. 25 is probably the happy medium there. I say that because you get into the spatial recognition of things, and it could really nauseate your client. That's where you have to pay attention to the nonverbals. Are they clenching their hands? If they're sitting, are their legs crossed? In terms of comfortability, we have to pay attention to the nonverbals. But it depends on the console, is what I'll say.
Thank you so much. And
Absolutely.
would it be okay, Dr. Stackhouse, if there are any other questions, if attendees are able to email you those?
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So at this time, we would like to provide our sincerest gratitude to you, Dr. Stackhouse, for this wonderful and meaningful presentation on esports for the win, expounding use in rehabilitation and recovery. Dr. Stackhouse, we're most grateful for you and for your work and the contributions and advocacy and for taking the time to share with us today.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. And if anyone has any questions, any insights, any outlooks on collaborating, let me know. I'm here. I'm here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stackhouse. And of
Absolutely.
course, for those in attendance, we appreciate you joining us today as well. And we would like to invite you to save the date for our next ARCA webinar scheduled for Friday, May 3rd, 2024 from 12 p.m. Eastern Time to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, titled A Look Beyond What You See, Unmasking the Imposter. The registration link for the next webinar can be found in the chat box, and we hope you'll consider joining us. And on behalf of the American Rehabilitation Counseling Association, we thank you, Dr. Stackhouse, again, and we thank all of you for joining us, and we wish each of you a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.